His name is synonymous with unimaginable wealth. He was the man who saw oil not as a fuel, but as a financial river to be owned, dammed, and controlled. This is the story of John D. Rockefeller, the first billionaire in American history, and the creation of Standard Oil. But his fortune was not built on innovation, it was built on ruthless, calculated destruction. He didn't just compete with his rivals, he obliterated them using a complex web of secret deals, railroad rebates, and industrial espionage. From humble beginnings, he mastered the art of the monopoly, controlling 90% of America's oil refining capacity. His wealth fueled hospitals and universities. But the methods he used to acquire it created the very laws designed to stop him. This is the truth behind the oil baron, the dark, definitive history of Rockefeller's Standard Oil monopoly. Owen Davison Rockefeller was born in 1839 in modest circumstances, raised by a con-man father and a deeply religious mother. This dual influence formed his character, the religious discipline of saving and the predatory cunning of the opportunist. From his very first job as a bookkeeper, he lived by an almost fanatical obsession with thrift and efficiency. He famously noted every penny spent and earned in a small ledger, a habit that would define his professional life. The Great Oil Boom began in 1859 in Pennsylvania, but Rockefeller saw what others missed. While everyone was scrambling to drill and find the next big well, a chaotic, unpredictable business, Rockefeller saw the true profit potential in refining. Crude oil was useless. The true value lay in turning it into clean, consistent kerosene for lighting. He didn't want the risk of finding oil, he wanted to control the process after it was found. In 1863, he co-founded his first refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. Unlike his competitors, Rockefeller focused obsessively on quality and cost-cutting. His kerosene never exploded, it was always the same pure quality. He knew that control over the supply chain was far more valuable than control over the source. This single insight became the blueprint for his entire empire. Rockefeller's method of growth was not organic, it was horizontal. His goal was simple: eliminate every single competitor in Cleveland. The city had 26 refineries, and he planned to own them all. His tool was an unparalleled focus on volume, allowing him to demand massive, hidden discounts or rebates from the railroad companies. Imagine this: for every barrel of oil Standard Oil shipped, the railroad not only gave Rockefeller a huge discount on his freight but, in a shocking display of corruption, also paid him a secret cash rebate on every single barrel his competitors shipped. His rivals were literally financing the man who was driving them out of business. The competition had two choices: sell to Standard Oil or face obliteration. When a rival refused to sell, Rockefeller would drop his prices so low that the competitor would bleed cash until bankruptcy. Then, Rockefeller would buy the bankrupt refinery for pennies on the dollar. This brutal, systematic process became known as the Cleveland Massacre, and by 1872, in just 4 months, Rockefeller controlled almost every refinery in the city. With Cleveland consolidated, Rockefeller needed to control the national rail lines. He secretly created the South Improvement Company in 1872, a shell corporation that existed solely to formalize his railroad monopoly. This secret deal promised the three major railroads massive, guaranteed volumes of Standard Oil freight in exchange for even deeper, legally binding rebates. When the independent oil producers in Pennsylvania discovered the plot, that the transport of their product was secretly being taxed to finance their destroyer, they were outraged. This was an attack not just on their business, but on the very principles of free enterprise. The producers organized a boycott, halting the flow of all crude oil to Cleveland, nearly crippling Standard Oil in the process. The plot was eventually exposed and the company was dissolved in the face of public fury. But it was a victory in name only. By exposing the railroad's fear of him, Rockefeller demonstrated the absolute power of high-volume contracts. He achieved the same pricing power without the South Improvement Company, simply because no railroad dared to lose his business. He learned that public backlash could be weathered. But financial power was absolute. By the late 1870s, Rockefeller controlled the refining of 90% of all oil in America. But the laws of competition were still technically a nuisance. To sidestep anti-monopoly laws that prevented one company from owning stock in another across different states, Rockefeller and his legal genius, Samuel Dodd, invented a radical new legal entity, the trust. The Standard Oil Trust was created in 1882. It wasn't a company, it was a mechanism. The shareholders of 41 separate Standard Oil companies across the nation surrendered their stock to 9 trustees, led by Rockefeller himself. In return, they received trust certificates which paid dividends. The trust gave Rockefeller total, centralized control over the entire American oil industry, legally making the competing companies act as one monolithic entity. It was the first true trust, and the most powerful. Rockefeller now controlled the entire supply chain, vertically integrating every part of the business, from the drilling, to the pipelines, the refining, and the retail distribution. He became a force of nature, generating so much money that he famously said, "I have had to develop a new technique for giving away money gracefully." His philanthropy, though massive, was a necessary counterpoint to the terrifying power he wielded. The public, watching the rise of this dark empire, began to fear the concentration of so much power in one man's hands. The journalist Ida Tarbell, whose own father had been destroyed in the Cleveland Massacre, began publishing a landmark series of articles called The History of the Standard Oil Company, exposing Rockefeller's secret deals and ruthless tactics. Her work was a catalyst for change. In 1890, the United States Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, specifically designed to outlaw the trust mechanism that Rockefeller invented. After years of legal battles, the Supreme Court ruled in 1911 that the Standard Oil Trust was an illegal monopoly and ordered its dissolution into 34 separate, competing companies. Rockefeller, however, had the last laugh. Since he owned a proportionate share of all 34 companies, the dissolution only multiplied his wealth. He retired the richest man in the world, living until the age of 97. The companies created from the Breakup, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others, dominate the global energy market to this day. His legacy is one of duality: the ruthless industrialist who crushed competition, and the philanthropist who funded modern medicine and education. But the eternal question remains, can a beautiful garden ever truly justify the blood on the soil it grows from?